morning. How are you? I'm Pastor Michelle Thomas. I'm running for candidate for Soil and Water Conservation Director. I am a native of Atlanta, Georgia, but I have been very active in Loudoun County on the fronts of preservation. Conservation and preservation are would be similar, very close in nature. And so I plan to bring my skill set to this conservation board. The Soil and Water Board is not a regulatory body. It's actually a best practices body that govern our natural resources. The goal of the board is to make sure that the county has a steady supply of sustainable soil and water resources. And I think it's a fascinating board. However, there are some gaps in this board in which I plan to fill, and that's why I'm running. I want to talk a little bit this morning about the intersection of preservation and conservation and the Soil and Water Board. Preservation of Loudoun County, we have large lands and historic lands in Loudoun County that should be preserved. Lots of those lands are former plantations and owned by the African American communities. Lots of those lands often get lost due to taxes and the loss of African Americans in farming. And so I'm hoping to use the best practices efforts to extend some of the education opportunities and some of the funding opportunities to target underrepresented communities and also African American communities. So. There are five main points that I want to hit on because I really believe that Loudoun is, as the record states, Loudoun is not only one of the wealthiest places in the country. Loudoun is probably one of the best places to live, and one of the reasons why it's one of the best places to live is because of opportunity. And so we need to make sure that we have progressive, inclusive opportunities for all of Loudoun citizens, and that is one of the reasons why we're running. Soil and water is that place where there's a lot of emergent opportunities that's coming, and we need to be prepared for them. Say, for instance, I'll give you a couple of them. Has anybody ever heard about solar farming? Anybody interested in that? Certainly, the Soil and Water Board would be interested in solar farming and getting that information out to the community of how Loudoners can get into solar farming for renewable energies. Also, what about bee farming? Anybody's heard of that? Bee farmers is taking off across the nation also, especially in the Caribbean. Bee farming is very, very important. We find a lot of good homeopathic help with farming, say for instance, especially for minority communities that have issues with eczema and asthma. We find that bee farming is very, very helpful because you take a teaspoon of the natural honey of your community and curb some of that that we experience. Also, my sister, who passed several years ago, developed multiple sclerosis, and bee farming is a path that patients use for cure. Say, for instance, they actually go to the bee farms and they get stung. Simple, they get stung. After they get stung, they have a certain level of increase in mobility, which is fantastic. I've seen it work for my sister. She would do it every 30 days. It lasts about 30 days. It depends on the person. But imagine not being able to walk or use your limbs or hands, and it's debilitating. But after getting stung, going through this process that takes about an hour, you have about 30 days of mobility and you do it all over again. So bee farming is going to be huge. Also, there's a big push for hemp farming. And so as we know that is something that is coming to Virginia. And so there's a lot of medicinal purposes for hemp, a lot of autoimmune diseases, lupus, again, multiple sclerosis, and several diseases that have been helped by using hemp, or let me just say CBD oils. But there are five main points of Loudoun growth plan that I hope to bring to the Soil and Water Board. Loudoun is growing. There's no way about it. There's only two choices that we can make, Alvin, if we're going to grow smart or not. Will Loudoun grow smart or not? And so there's 5 points in a smart growth plan that I've put together and hope to bring to the board. The first one is Loudoun must now pay attention to preservation and conservation as we grow. As Loudoun begins to grow and develop the western area, we must pay attention to those sacred spaces. We must pay attention to those farming areas. We must protect our farmers as we build our roads and streams. We must make sure that we don't saturate the area with a lot of construction debris and off run of bridges and things that happen during the construction. We need to be very sensitive to that. The other thing is economic development. We need to make sure that every Loudoun citizens have a fair shot to get in the game. We need to make sure that the education for economic opportunity does not stop at one group, that it reaches every group. The demographics of Loudoun is about 55.9% white, 18.8% Asian, 13% Latinx, 7% African American, and about another 75.75% of others. We need to make sure that all of those citizens have the opportunity to get into farming or agribusinesses. I don't know about you, but I love business. Loudoun loves businesses, and we need to make sure that we are getting this education. We also need to make sure that we are partnered with the public schools. Farming is not a dying industry. We need food to our tables. Is that right? We need to make sure that we are teaching our kids about the possibilities of farming. Everybody is more sensitive about eating healthy, eating organically. As you know, you guys know that Loudoun is one of the richest counties in the nation, but we still have a issue with food insecurity. People would not like to readily admit that, but it's true. And the way that we know that is because Loudoun County Public Schools actually send food home to those families that are not able to feed themselves over the weekend. So we have an issue, which means that we have an opportunity. Issues are not bad. They are opportunities for us to rise to the occasion to make sure that every citizen is given that opportunity to succeed. So we need to bring farming back to the schools. We need to connect with the schools, make sure they understand how to keep the environment clean, how to produce and grow their own foods, even if they're doing it out of on their porches, out of in hydroponics, and using some sort of effort like that. So you don't need 50 acres of land to be a farmer. You don't even need an abandoned warehouse. You need a porch, and I can grow cabbage out of a little. You know, okay. Exactly. So we need to increase our education opportunities with Loudoun County Public Schools. We also need to increase our outreach education with the community, making sure that adults in our community and those people that are interested in business have these opportunities. We also need to increase our environmental study or add an environmental study of our data centers. Loudoun is becoming the data center capital of the world. And we understand what the data centers are bringing to Loudoun in terms of their tax value. They are probably about a quarter of the tax revenue that's coming into this county. What we do not understand is what they're leaving behind. We do not understand environmentally what they're taking away from the county, what they're taking away from our natural resources. They use lots of natural resources. So, and the last thing is the expansion of community partnerships. Our partnerships with the community, with the business community, Chamber of Commerce, with those persons that are interested in entrepreneurship, we need to increase our partnerships. We cannot provide best practices in a vacuum. We cannot provide best practices to a certain set. We must provide best practices in an inclusive, transparent, and broad way. That's why I'm running. That's why I win. That's why you'll get results.